should be popping up. And hey, look, I even made a thumbnail for that. I was feeling really motivated.
Nice. I know, I saw that.
Like, there we go. It's live. I'm going to test the audio.
Facebook now.
I know. Boom! The audio sounds good. So, hello, everybody.
Hey, guys.
This is Convos with Creative. Obviously, I'm Charles King because you're on my profiles. This is Austin Reeves. Austin, where are you from? Tell me about yourself here.
I am originally from South Carolina. Grew up in Florida and came here in '05 into the beautiful city of Washington, D.C. and surrounding area.
Nice. I just realized since we just went live on Facebook, I probably shouldn't go into the meat of this. I should probably do some banter where it looks like I'm just doing banter, like, oh, look, my cat just walked into the shot, because we're doing this in my living room because I lacked on motivation to try to mix things up. Like one time before, I left my light stand in the shot, which is why I'm going to have to glance up here. So, by the way, if you are just tuning in, could you please let me know, can you hear me? Can you hear him say something here?
Yes, something.
Can you hear him? Because while we're both cinematographers, we're doing this by ourselves. And if you film, you know this is one of the most annoying, difficult things, and why most of us don't do it, because it's annoying to try to film yourself because you know where the mistakes are happening. You can't do anything. So if you're watching right now, let us know if you can hear us. And what we're going to do, Austin here is a freelance cinematographer in Washington, D.C. You know, as you know, I have a company and stuff like that, but there's a difference between working with companies and being a freelancer where you work with crews more so than doing your own thing, right?
Right. It is very different.
Sound is perfect. So that means we're ready to rock and roll. So back to that first question. Right. Austin Reeves, tell me, where are you from? What do you do?
A little bit of everything.
Okay. So that means you do photography.
Okay, hold on. I tried that. Let me say I have a profound respect for still photographers.
Okay.
Because I tried it, you can have it.
Okay.
I love photography, but I recognize how difficult it is, and I'm very happy capturing 23 or 29 frames a second and doing it that way.
Right.
Grew up in Florida.
Okay.
I'm a Florida brat. You know,
right.
Summers year-round, cold one day a year.
I know. What are you doing up here?
I needed a change.
Okay. Okay.
Buddy of mine got me talking to a couple of broadcasters up here, and you know, we went back and forth a couple of times, and the next thing you know, they're like, "Hey, can you be here on Monday?" And loaded up a U-Haul and drove up and started my career up here.
Well, nice, nice. So, like, since we're talking about travel, you came from Florida and stuff like that. How far do you normally travel for your normal jobs? We're not talking about when you get that random phone call, can you come to Thailand? For your normal run-of-the-mill jobs, how far do you normally have to go?
Usually, my jobs are in the DMV area. So, Washington, D.C., Virginia, Maryland.
Right.
That includes sometimes going up to Baltimore. It includes going down to like Richmond sometimes, and east and west. So pretty much this metro area and surrounding suburbs, as far as you would ever want to commute.
Right. So I'm guessing there's enough frequency that you don't have to try to do all those things.
Yeah. Thankfully, there's actually a fair amount of work that comes through Washington, D.C. Given the architecture and the history and all the important people that are here.
Right.
It is definitely a stopping point. So I'm grateful for that. I
Yeah.
thought about going to the Atlanta or LA and New York, but
it's a different type of business, I'm guessing.
It is.
Because, like, again, let's talk about the freelance thing. Again, as y'all see on my stuff, I normally do companies, small brands, individuals. But when it's freelancing, what are the main shoots and stuff like that you do frequently?
I do a lot of interviews, and oddly enough, I love interviews. Like, an interview for me, if I can have time to try and make it look really nice, is a great day. Which sounds boring as anything, but I mean, that's where the creativity and you can try new things and try and make people look as good as you can. And that is what has sustained me. There's a lot of interviews, a lot of corporate stuff,
right?
Government work,
right?
And the mixture between, because there's a lot of companies here who are marketing to the government,
right.
and vice versa. Done everything from defense contractors to universities and research firms, things like that.
And so, like, when it comes to the interviews, is that, like, again, you coming out as a solo shooter, or are you coming because you're part of a crew, or a crew sent you out? How does that normally work?
It can be anything. 2 weeks ago, we did an interview for an award show.
Okay.
And that was one interview with a 2.5-hour setup. It was myself, a first AC, a grip/PA, director, and producer.
Okay.
No sound because it was one interview.
Right.
So we ran sound ourselves, but 2 cameras.
Okay.
So I had another cam op.
Okay.
So, five people.
But did you set all that up, or did you get hired to be part of that?
I got hired. So
again, that's the freelance element. That's where you're not having to put together this crew because the client finds you. The client finds who normally hires you.
So again, it varies. It's a lot of times it's a producer or a director. Especially if I've worked with that director before.
Okay. Referral.
It can be other camera ops or DPs who say, "Hey, I know this guy. He's good with a camera and can do the job." So I'm not always working as the DP or the main camera. Sometimes I'm a B cam.
Okay.
I've done
sounds relaxing.
Right. I've done BTS for large productions.
Okay.
For like network shows and stuff.
Right. For marketing in the future and stuff like that.
Yep. And it varies because sometimes it is just myself. I have clients who producer calls me up and says, "Hey, we want to go shoot this for this client, and it's going to be interviewing these two people, and we're going to get some B-roll." And so it's just me going out and shooting and bringing lights and mics and loading up everything I can.
Right.
And then other times it's just me and a camera package, and then there's a sound guy showing up, and there's a gaffer and his truck showing up for lighting, and the final expectations are what dictate that.
Right. Okay.
And I know we'll probably get into this, but a little bit is client budget. But depending on
budget, the B word, y'all. Yep. The B word.
It is not a bad word, I promise. And every person I talk to the first time is like, I don't want to talk about budget, but it just makes sense.
Oh yeah, of course.
Do you want to buy a car? So I had a gentleman 2 days ago who emailed me and said, I want to do a video. How much does it cost? Well, it depends.
It could cost whatever you want.
Yeah. Do you want a Ferrari? Do you want a pickup truck?
Exactly.
Do you want it brand new? Do you want it used?
Right.
It's the same concept.
Right. And that's one of the things that I won't say I struggle with. That's one of the problems we always see. Everyone in our industry is like, where do you charge? What do you want to, ourselves, these shooters, like what should we charge and stuff like that? And then from the client standpoint, because that's how I look at a lot of things, it's how is a client going to feel? So, hey, we're in an apartment. I own an apartment complex. I want to do a commercial to advertise that. Let me hire somebody to do it. And when they call one of us, and I think about their perspective, hey, I just want to do a commercial. How much does it cost? In their mind's like, seriously, give me a price. But from where we sit, where again, us separately sitting, me looking at it as I'm gonna come out there as the director of photography, the camera op, the sound op, the director, like kind of the creative director, because I'm just gonna do it all in one package to make it really quick and easy and get them in and get them out. You're gonna come as a freelancer, hopefully, with the whole team where you have 12 different people as part of this thing, and the budget's much higher. And why is the budget higher besides a bunch of different people? And don't just say quality.
No, because I mean, truth be told, there are people in this world that will shoot circles around me with an iPhone.
We see them on TikTok. They're crazy.
It's just a fact of life.
Right.
But what dictates a lot of it, this is the same reason why you have a $2,000 camera and a $70,000 camera, and that's adaptability.
Right.
You can do things with a $70,000 camera you can't do with a $2,000 camera in that same time frame. It's just the way it is. So I look at it as how adaptable do we need to be? How much prepared for unknowns and variables do we need to be? If you have a high-profile guest coming out and you're going to do an interview and you need to be prepared no matter what happens, that dictates a certain amount of gear and personnel that's going to come into a situation versus, hey, we'd like you to come do this interview. Whatever you have on hand will suffice, and we'll deal with what happens as it happens. What happens if, for whatever reason, the location is unavailable that day? What happens if it's storming and raining and you don't have a backdrop? Now you're shooting outside into stormy skies and you're supposed to be talking about the beautiful weather.
Right.
There's all these things that you have to make sure you're prepared for, and the more people and kit that you have available within reason, generally the more adaptable you can be.
Right, and that's why, many clients, again, let's use an apartment person trying to get a commercial for their apartment complex. If you sit there and start mentioning the mere concept of close to six-figure shoot for a whole production, they're going to be like, how and why? But as you just mentioned, okay, let's break down, here, help me with this. How could this apartment complex here turn to a six-figure shoot?
Six-figure shoot, well, I will say six figures might be getting a little high, but
multiple people, talent.
Yep,
I'm talking about
and
go all
multiple
in.
days will definitely get you.
Yep, go into it. Let's make a six-figure shoot off this. How can we do this?
Let me scale it down for you first. So, if I'm coming out by myself and I'm going to do a couple interviews and a couple of locations, so let's say I have to interview someone downtown DC, I need to interview someone in Arlington, Virginia, and I need to go up to Georgetown.
That sounds like a lot of days and some travel too.
Right. So it's a lot of bouncing around. And so just having a couple of cases and a cart worth of gear, and you spend half an hour setting up, and then you shoot the interview, and then you tear it down, you waste a lot of time in that day. Now, if you add someone to that crew, now you can shoot more, because while I'm setting up the camera and getting it and looking around the location and figuring it out, now someone can be setting up the lighting. Now, if I have sound, now I don't have to worry about, if I have a sound op there, I don't have to worry about sound. He's taking care of mics, or she's taking care of mics. They're setting up the lighting because we've already talked about it. Hey, we're going to go into this building. I'm going to need these lights, and I'm going to set it up this way. So you can accomplish more faster with more people and a little bit more kit.
Right.
Sometimes we're going to be in this location, we're going to go to that location. So while we're setting this up, I can have one of the guys on the crew go to the next location and already be loading in and setting up stuff, because we've talked about it, we've scouted it on our day previous, and taken photos and discussed how we're going to light it, the angles. So in doing so, all that preparation really helps you move faster through your day. And that's really what it's about, is time is money.
Right, 100%. And as you keep mentioning, when you deal with a higher profile client, or whether it's a subject or the client itself, they value the time more than they value it. So if they want the whole production to be done in a week or a month, depending on how big it is, that's what they want. Figure out how to make it work, whatever the cost is, and get it out there. So that includes whether or not you have to involve catering for the people there. That involves whether you need to have the extras and on top of just normal talent. Whether, again, in your world, you have to have the electrician to pull out, a huge light. If we were doing an interview and this is going to be the backdrop, as you can see, you can barely see out these windows. But if we wanted to, this whole thing could be lit up. If this was nighttime, they'd light the whole thing back there. And that's how it all increases and increases and increases. So that's where, again, the different worlds start to collide, where you have, a 5-figure budget and a 6-figure budget. That's how they can, break apart. But back to what you were just saying, if somebody asks you, how much would this shoot cost? How much do you want it to cost is what it boils down to.
I approach that question this way, which is, what are you comfortable spending? Not what's your maximum that you're willing to spend. What are you comfortable spending? And 3 questions. What are you comfortable spending? What are your needs? What's the goal of the project? So if it's a documentary, what's the story we're going to tell? What's the deliverable you want? So do you want a 30-minute documentary? Do you want a 15-minute web video? Do you want a 2-hour documentary? That changes the project considerably.
Right.
And then what are you willing to pay for that, or comfortable paying for that? And then that gives me a very good ballpark of knowing, okay, well, if they've got this much to spend, I know it's going to take roughly this long to shoot it. You start dividing up days, figuring out how much crew you can have. And then the questions start getting more particular, like, okay, where do we need to go? Who do we need to talk to? And trying to schedule all that to figure out, all right, how tightly can we schedule within reason so that we're not wasting money and man hours.
Of course. So I want to take a moment right now and thank our sponsors. No, I want to say, people who are watching and stuff like that, in case you're watching, ask questions. Austin's a freelance cinematographer. We just did a whole bunch of stuff like that. So if you have questions, please put them in the comments. That's why I keep looking off the screen. That way we'll answer questions that you might have for him or me. I don't know what you have to ask me. But ask questions. Let us know if you can hear us and stuff like that. But yeah, so that explains, how you go about figuring out the pricing structure when somebody calls you. Because again, it's not that there are definitely people who probably do, all right, your budget's this, that's what it's going to cost. But that's not we as an industry as a whole are trying to do. We're trying to figure out exactly where you want it, because it's not something that's cookie cutter. Unless you're I would say in my world, it gets more cookie cuttery, because most of the people who contact me are the same types of client. They want this simple turnkey package. We knock it out of the park. It's repeatable and stuff like that. Whereas with yours, you have to figure out where in the spectrum they want to be.
Well, and I I struggle with this, as I think we all do.
Yeah.
And because a lot of people keep things like rates and how you market yourself and how you package your services close to the vest. But until you reach that union level, which I have not yet, at least not 600 level, you can do really whatever you want.
Right.
As long as you can make a living doing it, you can charge whatever you want.
Right.
I made the decision a while back because I've struggled between the freelance world and being an employee doing broadcast work for many years, and I knew I always wanted to go freelance.
It's a scary jump.
It is. I was finally able to do it, but in the back of my head, it's always been, okay, how much do you charge? How do you price this out so that, one, you're not taking work away from yourself, but also, you kind of fit into that world and don't look like you don't know what you're doing.
Well, of course. Because that's a horrible experience right there.
Yes. So I look at it as you have your day rate, whatever they're going to pay for your labor, which is generally a 10 or a 12-hour day. Yes, that's the normal for anyone who's not in our industry. And then you have your box kit, or what clients are going to pay for your gear.
Right.
And so, like, I would consider pretty much anything in my camera package, and even depending on what I'm doing that day, even the lighting and sound, I'll consider part of my box kit, and then they pay kind of a package price for that.
Okay.
And then any kind of specialty items, things that I have to rent from a rental house for the job, just get kind of line itemed on there.
And so, like, I've seen that process before. I've talked and heard from people where they argue that process, where they're like, okay, the client doesn't care about whether you're using this camera and this lens, blah, 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 blah. Why is it you stand firm with your box kit idea, your kit price idea?
Well, and I actually had an interesting discussion with a couple people on Facebook about this the other day, which is, I don't try and nickel and dime clients. I don't want to get into, I'm charging you this for this lens and this for that lens. But at the same time, you have to be able to replace that gear at the drop of a hat.
Oh, yeah.
So at the very least, I need to charge for my camera package at least what it costs to go and replace a camera day of or day before to ensure that I have equipment on set.
Right.
And I've seen people who just frankly don't charge what their gear is worth. And there's some marketing to that. I certainly have dropped the rates on my gear, and you have some wiggle room.
There's competition.
Yeah, you want to get the job, but at the same time, as a professional, I also need to be there and prepared. I can't call a client up the day before and be like, look, I can't do that because it's going to cost me $1,000 to go rent this gear because my camera broke yesterday.
Right.
And I can't afford that. Well, they have to pay the way I bill it. They have to pay that. And that way, if something happens, then it's on me. I go and rent it and show up and we do the shoot.
Right. I mean, even like hearing that again, it's one of those things it makes me at least feel like maybe I should adjust my rates a little bit, because when you really think about it, I haven't had to file many insurance claims, or actually any of them, to be honest with you. I have one I should do, but that's just, it's a luxury. It's not something that's essential right now. But like, let's say, for example, I'm out here with this setup we're using right now, and I were to drop and break something. Does that mean that now I made, pocketed after my deductible for the insurance a few $100? That's not cool, especially when you're looking at it as that's your primary source of income, and it's not just your living luxury. Is like, hey, I need this to keep things going. So that should be something major. I would say most people should factor in when it comes to pricing themselves at their bar level.
Just make sure you can maintain your business. Because I have friends who have had to leave the business because they just outgrew themselves. They couldn't afford to stay in it because they weren't charging enough, as they had to turn over cameras and edit systems and other gear that turns over faster than, say, like lighting gear.
Right.
You're replacing a camera every 2 to 3 years now.
It should be, at least.
At least you need to be able.
Yeah,
you need to be able to.
Right.
That's the thing. You might not have to, but you need to be able to.
Right.
So you have to figure in that, and like you said, there's things like insurance and licensing and educational stuff. We're always learning. I pay too much for educational stuff.
Do you have some educational stuff that you don't even use? You paid for, you haven't used it?
I do.
Isn't that the worst feeling in the world? It's like, hey, I paid a bunch of money for that online course, and
I'm on a couple of Patreons because, and I watched a video this morning. It's the first time I've watched it in probably 3 or 4 months, not because I don't love the videos, because I've just been too busy.
Yeah, absolutely. And once you, for me at least, once you get out of that educational groove, it takes a minute to get back in there. Once you're in it, whether it's the sales training or camera training or whatever, it's like you get obsessed with it. You keep on wanting to watch and consume. But once you get out of it a little bit, start watching some, WandaVision, whatever it might be for a little bit. It takes a little bit of motivation to let me get back into wanting to, increase higher learning stuff.
I will say though that when I start watching, and not like the little quick 5-minute YouTube videos, but there's a couple of people when I watch stuff. Like that is inspiration for me, because I see good people doing work, and it just makes me want to go out and try and achieve that.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I have that same thing when it comes to the sales training. That's why with some of the sales training that I follow, that they suggest like watching it daily, just so you're in the right mindset for people who sell daily. And it's the same thing. Like, I mean, you probably have done the same thing where it's like, oh, you're getting ready to do something. Let me watch this one, video tutorial. So get yourself kind of, in the mindset of whatever it might be.
Half an hour later.
I know back in the wedding, when I did more weddings, I used to do that. I was like, oh, let me watch this posing tutorial real quick before I go out there, because it's been a minute. Just to, kind of get yourself warmed up, because we haven't talked about that. I just totally segued. Weddings. Do you do weddings?
I do not do weddings. I made a conscious decision that I don't want to do weddings anymore. I have to say, there's a very good reason why I said no more weddings.
Well, I mean, there's many reasons for that.
Because the only shoot I have ever just completely forgotten about was actually a wedding.
Wow.
I will admit that. Thankfully, it was a friend. We hadn't worked out all the details. It was a last second thing. Someone bailed on him, and I said I'd go and do it. And we never discussed everything. And I open up Facebook, and I'm like, now they're actors. So I'm like, are they doing a wedding scene? Oh, no.
Wow. I'm surprised you didn't get a phone call on that.
You know what? They were the sweetest people about it. And I love them to death. But there were no hard feelings, at least that I'm aware of. And, they're great.
Okay.
And I appreciated it because there was a lot going on at that period in my life, and I felt pretty horrible about it.
Wow.
So point being, weddings, it's just too important for me. Like I can handle having an entire crew, a camera goes down, our generator dies, we lose our location, it rains, I don't care. That's fine, I can deal with that. I don't want to screw up someone's happiest day.
Okay, I can respect that. Which is different. Most times when I hear people say they're out of weddings because they don't like them, whatever, that's respectable. I can get behind that. But no, it takes a lot, and there's also, I would say, almost more communication back and forth than some larger scale shoots. And
absolutely.
A lot of times they're going in circles. It's not like a structured communication. It's more like, so what do you think? Or
with weddings, you're in like your business to client or business to consumer.
Yes.
Whereas what I tend to prefer is business to business. So I'm dealing with a director, a producer, production company, crewing agency, something like that, and the client's going through them.
Right.
And I will admit there are some benefits to having that separation and just not having to deal with that sometimes.
Oh yeah, of course.
Because I've seen directors or a producer who's really under the gun, and it's like, I'm glad I'm not that person.
And they know, and that's why a good producer, he or she is doing the balancing act of making sure that the stress isn't on you. I mean, there's stress on you, but they know exactly where the client's, where it is, and they're balancing that. They're balancing everybody's expectations so everybody can basically chill the F down on set, so you don't have that one client who's, and this happens to me a lot of times on my shoot, like I show up and I'm trying to set up, and then the client, they want to talk about invoicing or something like that. I'm like, this isn't where my mind needs to be right now.
Right.
Like, I don't need to worry about the invoice or like I'm trying to focus on doing this one singular creative task.
Yep.
So that's where the producer, that line item is valuable in my opinion.
Yes. And generally if they've been in the business for a minute, they kind of have a concept of what's going on. They understand what you're doing, or if things are going wrong, which is generally when people start asking questions, and they do. Things go wrong all the time, but that's what makes you a professional, is being able to overcome them.
Right.
Someone from the outside looking in sometimes doesn't understand that, or they get worried or they're concerned. And so just having someone who kind of understands the business and understands what you're dealing with, even though they might ask questions, I feel like it's a little less stressful than having a end client or a consumer who's there asking for something.
Well, it's also different layers of buffering and communication. So let's use this for example. If you're working with a small office, for example, and you have the owner of the office who's not marketer, they don't have a marketing person, whatever. They're just the owner who hired you in hopes that it's going to generate more revenue. This piece of content that we're creating, you or I are creating, is going to somehow magically make more revenue. No, number one, that's where the marketing, creative director, and strategist has come up with an idea. We're going to use this for this purpose, and that's why we're having this vision of what we're doing. In your world, that's why you have the storyboards. That's why you have all this stuff as opposed to how, I'm sure you filmed this way as well. All right, we're going to show up. We have some action scenes of something happening. We're going to film all this stuff, and we're going to make it into something later. We don't even know what it's going to be. Me personally, I hate that type of filmmaking. Yes. I truly, with a passion, hate having to do that. Yeah. It's fun. Don't get me wrong. I've definitely done some fun destinations where it's like, hey, we went to this resort, and okay, there's going to be some people at the beach. We're going to do a food scene. We have some talent for that. And we're going to get a car driving here. We have no clue how all that's coming together. I'd rather have that storyboard where it's like, this is the shot we're going for right there. The lobster's going to come out on somebody's hand. There's going to be an overhead shot. I like that.
Yep. As long as I can put in a little thought, it doesn't have to be a lot, but if I can put in a little thought after I kind of see the place or whatever location we're working in and collect my thoughts, I'm immensely happier than if you're walking into something cold and it's like, okay, we got to shoot an interview right now, or we need to go shoot the chef working in the back.
Right.
And you walk in and there's 18 people crammed into a space like this, and lights are out and it's not dressed, so it doesn't look nice, and you're just like, oh God.
Right.
Okay, this is going to be
from the client standpoint, that's our kitchen. You shot the chef. It's like the kitchen's the size of this corner, right? That's
or it's it might be a beautiful kitchen, but the chef works right here, right next to where the trash pail is, or something like that. Like little things like that make a huge impact.
Exactly, and that's where that storyboard and that pre-scout comes in handy. Again, this is where the bigger scale productions and I would like to call it the proper way of filming works out, as opposed to when the budgets are tighter and it's like, I'm going to show up on this day with my camera package and we're going to try and make something happen.
And I wish it were always like that, but it's not always proper.
True.
You win some, you lose some, but that's I think what makes the difference in a lot of people is being able to overcome those challenges.
Right.
And troubleshooting. Troubleshooting is a big one.
Of course.
If you want to learn anything that will help your career, learn to troubleshoot things.
I mean, you're going to learn. You're going to learn real quick on stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I got way off my script here.
I know. Well, we like talking, so.
Well, yeah. By the way, questions. If you have questions, put them in the comment here. I'm going to try to see what's going on YouTube. We're going live on Facebook and YouTube. While I'm doing that, we just talked about having a camera kit, camera package. Like, how do you structure that stuff out? Like when you talk about camera kits, camera packages, and stuff like that.
So on mine, which I have two cameras I like to shoot on. I have the Sony FS7 and I have the.
Oh, we're talking about gear.
Yes. I mean, that's what we live for, right?
Right.
So I have the Sony FS7 and I have the Red 8K Helium S35. Generally on those, I have a wireless follow focus kit now. I have a Teradek wireless director's monitor and a small prime lens kit and zoom lens. And those are like the zoom lens is a DSLR lens with some image stabilization. It just affords me a little bit of different tools. If I'm handheld and I need to walk around and we can't afford a Steadicam or a gimbal or something, it just takes the edge off a little bit.
Right.
So it's not bouncing around as much. The Prime kit's great because it's low light, but I generally just kind of lump all those into a camera package. So it's one price for the FS7, it's one price for the Red, and then
it's more moving parts when you pull out a Red.
It is. Now, if it's me and a camera package, that's really me and a cart and about 5 cases.
Right.
And that's when the camera's built. My living room was spread out with gear cases organizing this past weekend. So.
Right. Well, why do you think I keep this empty space right here in my living room for when I have to build? That exact reason.
Yeah. And, I'll change it up. I don't get into, the client wants this light or, they don't want the follow focus. package that enough that I'm comfortable.
Right.
Whether I've got that or not, that's for me.
Right.
That makes me faster. It makes me better.
Right.
And I will sometimes throw stuff into a kit just because I know it's going to make my life easier, make the client happier. But when I go to rental gear and I have to go to a rental house and start pulling stuff, that I generally charge for by item.
That makes total sense. With my kit, it really is. I run around with a lot of mirrorless or some of the cinema cameras, the Canon stuff and all. But I don't sit there and try to do the bigger stuff with the Red because for what I'm doing, we talked about this off live stream. My clients don't care. They don't have that. They're not looking for it. They don't care. They visually cannot tell the difference. When it comes to your clients, do they sometimes specify the camera or something like that, or have that requirement?
I have gotten jobs just because of the camera I got, and I have gotten jobs where they said, we don't care what camera you have, and I've had jobs where they hired me and we worked out what camera we're going to use later. I don't think you should so much worry about what camera. I don't think clients should be so worried about what camera.
Right.
I do think different tiers of cameras give you different abilities. I mean,
of course.
Don't get me wrong. I love my Red, and I would shoot with it every day if I could. But sometimes it's just data overkill for clients. And with that, though, comes a lot of adaptability.
Right.
And you can very quickly change the image on set to look pretty much whatever you want. The Sony is good, but it's not as adaptable as the Red, and the workflow I think for Red is better.
Or yeah,
they're
I don't
just
know why
tools.
I'm saying I have no clue what Red.
They're just tools, and going into it knowing I like having a tool that I know what I can do with it, whether that's a Canon camera or a Sony camera or Red or Arri or whatever. For me, it's just how much control do you want to have over the image in post.
Right. Okay.
That really dictates it. And what have you shot with other? Because being in DC, there's not a lot of full productions that take place here. There are a lot of pieces of productions that take place here. And that's one thing that I think is a little different from like your LA, Atlanta, New York, where they'll shoot a lot of, they may shoot a whole program there. Here, a lot of times it's just
it's amateur.
Right. We're going to shoot with this congressman and we need this event going on for example.
DC is the event place.
Exactly. So if they're cutting that in with other cameras, generally they want a camera that matches that, which makes sense. So they'll say, hey, we want you in a C300. Well, I have to go rent that. I tell you what, I can give you my FS7 if you're comfortable with that, and it'll cost you a little less. Or I'm happy to go across the street and I'll rent the C300, and you get what you would like. Right. It's all about making the client happy.
Well, of course. And again, with your clients, they are specifically requesting that type of stuff, as opposed to, when I get that event call, it's like, hey, we want to capture this event. And then, the conversation goes into, what do you want to capture? Right. Am I showing you every single speech that was there? Are we making some type of recap? What are we talking about here?
Well, but I will say that I'm willing to bet when you do photos, excuse me, when you do photos, you're generally doing some kind of post on those. So you're gonna color them, you're gonna match them all, and that's a lot of clients don't have that kind of time, especially when they're piecemealing from multiple cameras, multiple locations. So they do want it to match.
Right, and they want to turn something around quickly, because when it comes to an event, like here with Grammys just went off, Grammy for the SEO. They just went off. Whatever their recaps are, they need to be out today, because by tomorrow or whatever, nobody cares as much. Yeah. Aside from the trickle effect of whatever people's complaining about.
So they jumping back to something we talked about earlier, the interview that we did, that was like a 5-person crew. They were very specific. We want these cameras. And we want one on them. We want one motorized slider. We want one on a fixed tripod. And I got lighting samples, so I knew what kind of lighting they were going to do the other interviews on. So you get some tone, contrast, and location was very similar. So we were able to match that pretty well going into that. But we knew all that going in. So it's very quickly you can look at it and go, okay, well, I'm going to need these kinds of lights. I know I'm going to have to rent a motorized slider. I know I'm going to need a B camera that I don't own, so I'm going to rent that and build a budget for them.
So what you're trying to say is for some of the stuff you're doing, you don't keep a whole bunch of cameras just sitting on the shelf.
I used to get as much gear as I could, and now I'm trying to get rid of gear. So if you want to buy anything, let me know. I'll give you,
no, thank you. I try to keep it very simple and structured, but available.
I realized I need enough to be viable for the day and go out and do everything that I want to do for your basic shoots. But once you have your basic kit together, it's just cheaper to rent it. And I live across the street from a rental house, as you know, so it makes life a little bit easier.
For the 10,000 people watching this.
Yes. Shout out to DC Camera. Thank you guys. Right. They helped me out a lot, so I appreciate that. But
well, it makes sense because I remember like years ago, back when again on the HD camera tier, the C100s were the popular thing. I got a couple of them, and I didn't regularly shoot with both of them. I would shoot with one of them primarily, and seriously, one of them just sat there. They're sitting right now. I mean, they're paid for. It's not hurting me at all, but just one of those like. Each of those cameras by themselves are $5,500. Yours are between $15, $20 and up and stuff like that. And it's just like that sucks when they just sit.
Yeah, it does.
So it does make a lot more sense to rent the extra stuff outside of what you normally need on a regular basis.
Yeah. And it's knowing your business. I mean, so I bought one camera of each tier. I have a friend of mine who's down in Florida. He doesn't buy cameras unless he buys at least two of them. He just won't do it because he does a lot of multicam stuff.
Okay, that makes
so
sense.
For him, he would always be renting. So if he looks at a camera, he just goes and buys two because he's going to do enough multicam that it's going to pay for it in itself.
Right. And for his workflow, the speed, the efficiency, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And also, I'm sure he might be nitpicky where he has to have it exactly multicam.
I will say that you can get cameras that match, like even for those that have shot on the FS7. The FS7-1 and the FS7-2 look different to me side by side, even though they shouldn't. I've put two FS7s next to each other and they look different. I put two C300s next to each other and they look different. There's always variability or variables in them, and they never look perfect. That's why you shoot a chip chart. And can correct it in post.
What is that, by the way, for the people?
So just you'll see like the color cards that they'll hold up sometimes before a shoot, and it'll have colored chips that are calibrated. So those chips are this color. Nowadays, some of the edit software, you can actually just pull a template over that and hit correct, and the software will actually try and match them.
That's cool.
But it helps to bring your cameras in line and match them to a known source.
Well, no, that makes total sense. What we got here? Oh, we were just talking about post-production. So for most of your shoots, are you even doing post-production, or are you just filming, shooting, and then keeping it moving?
I prefer to shoot.
Don't we all?
For a couple of reasons. One, I love shooting. I love lighting. I love cameras. Even though I started as an editor.
Okay.
Actually, I didn't tell you that. I started my career as an editor. I love editing. I think it made me a better shooter because I can see the edit in my head. Even if it's not the way it's going to end up, I can see a way to get from point A to B to C as I'm shooting and know, okay, this is going to get me in trouble. I have to have another shot to get me out of this. But at the same time, it takes a lot of time. I have a lot of respect for people that can sit there and bang away on a project for a week. Because it just, at a certain point, I'm just like, oh my God, I can't look at this anymore.
Oh no, 100%, especially when it's a bigger job. Like you talked about those multi-hour docs and stuff like that. That's a lot of stuff going on, especially when it's really creative intensive, not just like straight through. Like it's one thing to have something that you're editing straight through that's just multicam, knock it out. But when you're like really trying to make some creative, whatever cinematic masterpiece, that's months.
Yeah. And people don't realize, I mean, people say edit nowadays, but it's really, I mean, you're editing, you're doing audio finishing, you're doing grading, and then there's not only you have color correction, but you also have color grading. And just like we talked about how there's variables between cameras, the light's changing, a light got moved, or the tonality in the scene changed a little bit for whatever reason, even though it probably shouldn't have. I might have screwed something up. Sorry, guys. You have to go through and fix all that. And that requires a lot of time and a lot of skill. And so it's, people say edit, but there's a lot more that goes into it than just, I'm going to put this shot, then this shot, then this shot.
Oh, yeah.
And graphics and all of that stuff.
Well, I mean, you're absolutely right. And so let's see here. Let me make sure I got all my stuff here. Finding jobs for freelance. How do you normally find these jobs?
I'm on several directories. I have
paid or free directories?
Paid.
Yeah, pay to play.
Yeah. And some of them are cheaper than others. You're going to pay if you're going to get on a directory. And this just, hey, it's like, think of it as Indeed for production. So it's going to ding, hey, there's a job posting for this. That might be $150 a year. It might be $600, $700 a year. And I'm on a couple of them. So I get a lot of emails, and most of them just get deleted because I'm not interested. But the nice thing is it just alerts me to jobs that are available.
Right.
And then you got to do the whole pitch and sell yourself. I get a decent amount of calls through like website and people I know. And then I have a couple of production companies that I've worked with before that call me up, and thankfully I've done a good job and they're happy with my work.
Right. I mean, and then I'm guessing referrals too?
I think referrals and who you meet in this business and the contacts you keep are the best way to make money in this business.
I agree with you.
You can't put a price on that. It is a small business too. Don't burn bridges.
Oh no, of course. The referrals and the production stuff, especially from what I see, is tremendous. Like heck, there's one production company you referred me to. I'm actually doing a job for them tomorrow that they sent me out for the live streaming stuff.
Yep.
And it's like it's not really meant to be competition. It's like, okay, it's a live stream thing. If they want just you, they're going to go with you. If they want the live stream thing, they call me.
But I mean, the best case scenario is, you know what, we're both working, and there's going to be days that I'm just not available. There's going to be days that you're not available.
True.
And so it's not competition. It's trying to help out others around you and them helping you out and keeping those business relationships.
Keeping it all moving.
Exactly.
No, I'm with you. Well, I mean, that's all I got. So I definitely appreciate you being on here. I don't know how long we've been going on this, but 40 minutes. That's a pretty good episode.
That was like 10.
Wow. Well, I mean, that's a pleasure. Well, I appreciate you coming on here. So thank you.
Thanks,
so
man.
with that being said, I'm going to close this thing out
all right.
by clicking. Actually, I got to walk off.